I'm Shireen with All of Street Designs, and join me as I refinish this Drexel Accolade Highboy. This is in really good condition. It does have a few areas that are missing some chunks, and it's got some water damage on top, but this is from the late 1970s. I think this one's 1978, so it's expected to have some areas that are pretty messed up, but overall in good condition. And I just love this style. This is a campaign style dresser, that hardware that's recessed. The first thing I need to do is get that beautiful hardware off of there. So the handles all come out very easy. These accents on the corners sometimes give me a little trouble. This is probably the 5th or 6th Accolade that I worked on, so I know how these come off. But they just stay on there with pressure, so you can see those go into the corners. Now that I've got all the hardware off, time for a good cleaning. And once that's dry, I go in and start sanding. I'm using Serious Grit 120 just to get started, and this is going to take a while. Lots of sanding. Stripping a piece, no matter what you're doing, takes a lot of work. But this one has, just a lot of details and things, so I thought, well, let me try the carbide scraper. I just put a new blade on it, so I'm excited, this is going to cut into this finish, and I scraped and got this one little corner and decided, no, I'm just going to sand. So I got all the flat parts pretty much sanded down, and time to start on the drawers. So I wanted to make sure the sides are all nice and clean. Look at those dovetails, one drawer at a time, if it only went this fast. But making some good progress. So now I'm using my little contouring rubber blocks. This helps get into all these little areas, as well as this contour scraper. I know it makes a horrendous sound, so I always have headphones on, but it really just saves me so much time with sanding. There's lots of tips that can be changed, so they'll get into different areas. But back to the blocks, so it's kind of a back and forth between this little contour scraper and then the sanders. Notice that black line. I don't do that with my orbital sander. I always do this by hand, and you'll see it makes quick work of it by hand, but if you do it with the orbital, that's how you blow through your veneer. Again, changing tips on my contour scraper. Back to the sanding blocks and a sanding net. I figured out over sandpaper this worked much faster. So just back and forth. Every detail required a different size block, but wow, finally getting in there. I felt like I was sanding my life away, but making good progress. And then I got to looking at it and thought, I wonder if I should take this base off. Well, I'm committed to taking the base off at this point. No going back now. Once you start hammering and tearing it apart, that's it. I'm committed. So we're taking this off. I've done a bunch of these Accolades, probably 5, and I've never taken the base off, and I've always wanted to. So I figured with this one, I'm just going to go for it. They're a little short. I feel like it's a little short. That base is only 2.5 inches, and I was like, I think this dresser could use a little more height. So I finally got that off of there. Off to Lowe's to get some oak. Because my dresser is oak, I want to make sure that I get oak just so it all matches. And it took a while, but I was able to find some straight pieces. Brought those home. That's $60 worth of oak right there. It's expensive right now. So I want to make sure I measure twice and only cut once, because I don't want to mess up any of this wood and go back. It's so expensive. I'm just cutting all my pieces for my base. I have a full tutorial on building this base on my channel, and it goes through every detail. So I'm going to gloss over some of it here, but I'm cutting the legs now. I set up a stop here so that all of mine are the same length. I just clamped that on. And again, I go over all that in the tutorial. And I'm building the side, and then I'll put that together with the front pieces. And now that I have it together, I just want to make sure that everything fits okay. And everything looks great. So sanding down the base, it was already beautifully smooth, but I just want to make sure it's good to go. And I need to repair these corners. This is like the most common repair. I'm trying out Farmhouse Wood Pate. This is the creamiest, most beautiful wood filler. Who knew? I love this stuff. And they've got some that's light, and then there's a darker one. After sanding, that's delicious. I am hooked on this stuff. So now that I have those corners repaired, I do not want to damage them, so a blanket goes underneath. Just show some love. So when I stand this up, it goes on the blanket. I keep those corners nice and square. And now I have to go over the entire piece again. This time with 220 grit, but it's beautiful. A damp cloth, and you'll see that wood turns yellow like nobody's business, and I'm not really into yellow. So I mixed up a paint wash. Any tan paint will do. This is the one I happen to have on hand. That was a 4-in-1, so 1 part paint, 4 parts water. And I want this to be really light and kind of luxurious along with that brass. So it's a little opaque. But that wood grain, because this is oak, that wood grain is so heavy that it really is still going to show through just fine. So I put it on there with a poly brush and I wipe it off with a nice soft towel. And you can see that you can still see the wood through that. And then when it dries, it really soaks in and becomes a little bit more transparent. Time to deal with the hardware. So I mixed some vinegar and water in a pan. 15 minutes this is going to boil. This is called hardware soup. Once it's all done, I take it out, put it in the sink, let everything cool, and then go in Barkeeper's Friend and steel wool and scrub like there's no tomorrow. Scrub and scrub and scrub. But it's worth it because look at that brass. These are solid brass. So no paint needed. They just come out beautifully on their own. Flip this thing upside down and time to install that base. Pocket holes everywhere. It goes all the way around. This is a 4-sided base, which I love. It's so secure. And with that oak being such a hard wood, this is a nice sturdy base. I raised it up 6.5 inches taller, so it really made a good difference. Okay, time to address the drawer liners. Those I thought were going to be a bear, but they came right out, and then I just had some things to clean up on the bottom. I always use a big brush to clean out all the dust. Measure carefully, and I don't like to waste any materials, so I do measure to the exact dimensions of the drawer. And I'm just using a construction square, and I get everything lined out and cut it. Everything's so expensive too that I just don't like to waste it, but this is how I do it. And I dry fit it just to make sure it all fits good before I peel this backing off, because if it doesn't, you're in trouble at this point. But everything was great, so I went ahead and got that in there. I first put it down with my hands and get everything smoothed out. Then go in with a plastic putty knife. Just get into those corners and the edges. Get all the air bubbles out. And beautiful. Okay, now that everything's all dry on the dresser, it's time for some top coat. In between coats, I always sand and then wipe it down again. Another coat of top coat. I did 3 layers of top coat. This is General Finish's High Performance in flat. And then the sides of the drawers that I sanded, I want to make sure I just get those all moisturized. I did take the drawer all the way out to do the whole thing, but okay, time to put the details back on. These beautiful brass corners, just tapping them in with a rubber mallet. The campaign hardware that recesses into the hole. Beautiful. Remember what it used to look like? And here it is now. You can still see the wood, but it's light. I feel this is a very luxurious finish. I hope you like it. This was a lot of work to restore this piece, but all worth it in the end. Drexel is just a beautiful dresser, and this is a high quality piece with a luxury finish. Be sure to follow for more.